Rebecca, new Netflix romance thriller starring Lily James, Armie Hammer, Kristen Scott Thomas. It's an adaptation of a novel written by Daphne du Maurier, a second one in fact. Originally, the film was adapted back in 1940 into a classic movie directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It's considered to be very good, and so naturally would cast a shadow over this new film. In my case, I have never seen that older adaptation, so I was able to approach this one with a completely open mind, not knowing the plot, not comparing it to anything else. And I have to say, I liked it quite a lot. Let's start with the story outline though. It's the early 20th century. We meet Lily James's character, whose name is never actually spoken throughout the entire film, in Monaco, where she's working as a companion to this older rich lady who also happens to be a massive asshole. While staying at a hotel, she meets a dashing young man named Max de Winter, played by Armie Hammer. He's also rich, well connected, from a good family, and owns what is said to be the most beautiful house in the entire England. But he does also have some baggage, apparently. Just a few months before the events of the film, his beloved wife Rebecca died, which very obviously still has a heavy impact on the man. Anyway, the two young people meet in the hotel, immediately catch each other's eyes, and begin a romance that ends up in a quick marriage and the move back to the house in England. It turns out to be this huge, lavish mansion with dozens of servants and people running the house. The new Mrs. De Winter is overwhelmed by all of this and clearly out of her depth, and she suddenly has to learn to navigate this new situation. But the housekeeper, played by Kristen Scott Thomas, will probably not make that easy. And to top it all off, in the house, the presence of the late Rebecca is felt stronger than ever before, and with time becomes increasingly sinister. And as we also slowly get closer to learning the truth, the secret behind her passing. Now, I know it seems like I've said a lot, but believe me, it's not. It's the most basic outline of the plot, which I have to say surprised me more times than I would have expected, with its twists and turns. It's very well written, and I'd even use the word riveting. There are multiple times over the course of the film where you think you have all the information now, but there's still more. There's a twist coming that you didn't see. That's what I look for in thrillers, and that's what I got here. It also has two very strong performances. Lily James is great in the lead role. I think part of that is her natural looks and ease with which she sells this youthful innocence and ignorance, but still, she's completely believable. The second performance that caught my eye is actually not Armie Hammer, as you may have expected, who is okay in this film but nothing to write home about, but Kristen Scott Thomas. She's pitch perfect as the rule-bound, slightly terrifying housekeeper, and again, a large part of that are the looks. But I think even more so than Lily James, this particular performance required a lot more nuance and depth to it, and it delivers. At different points of the film, you hate the character, you respect her, you despise her, and also once or twice you actually do relate to her. Marvelous job in terms of acting. The film is also very, very pretty and very competent at using two distinct looks for what happens prior to the arrival at the mansion and afterwards. The stuff in Monaco is drenched in sun, warm colors, relaxed atmosphere. In England, there's a very noticeable switch to darkness, shadows, washed out color palette, more greens and blues and whites. The sets and the costumes look fantastic as well. I'm no expert if they're all period accurate, but they did pull me into the story. They were believable to me. Final point, I really liked how Lily James's character progresses through the story and changes with it. And apart from that being exemplified by obvious things like dialogue or her clothes, it's also in the subtler details. There's a scene at the beginning of the film, for example, where De Winter tells her to drive his car, and she's very reluctant to do it, kind of shy, nervous. But later in the film, as she finally begins coming into her own and begins to take charge, she's seen in the driver's seat, this time confident and without question. Details like this make me enjoy movies even more. And that's what happened with Rebecca. Again, I haven't seen the previous adaptation. It's entirely possible that Hitchcock's version is better and makes this one look poor in comparison. But without that knowledge, on its own, this version of Rebecca stands as a really solid film. Worth watching, to be sure.